All right, so we're back and ready to dive into the aftermath of this 2024 election. You know, you sent over some pretty interesting stuff, articles, a clip from Steven Crowder, and wow, things are already getting kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah, turbulent times for sure. Trump back in the White House and the media landscape is definitely shifting big time.
Yeah, right off the bat, 3 big names have already said they're ditching X. You know, what used to be Twitter,
Right.
Joy Reid, Don Lemon, and Jamie Lee Curtis, all gone. Makes you wonder, what's the deal? Just a protest against Trump being back or something more?
Well, the timing is definitely interesting. Seems like there's some disillusionment with the platform itself. You know, we've been hearing these worries about misinformation spreading and those echo chambers.
Right.
Maybe this is a sign that people are getting uneasy with how things are going online.
You know, I hear those terms all the time, echo chambers, polarization. But to be honest, I'm not always sure what they actually mean.
Right.
Can you break it down for me and for our listeners? What are these echo chambers and how do they really work?
Okay, so imagine a room where all you hear is your own voice bouncing back at you. That's basically what an echo chamber is, but on social media. The algorithms, you know, they're designed to show you stuff you'll like, but they can end up filtering out anything that you might disagree with.
Ah, interesting.
You just keep seeing things that confirm what you already believe. And your biases just get stronger and stronger because they're never challenged.
So it's not just people choosing to follow those they agree with. The platform itself is feeding them more of the same.
Exactly. These closed loops, that's where misinformation and extreme views can take hold. And it becomes really tough to have any kind of reasonable conversation with someone who sees things differently.
That makes a lot of sense. So these big names leaving X, it makes it even more interesting. Are they trying to find different platforms that are more balanced? Or are they just done with social media altogether?
Good question. It'll be fascinating to see where they go and if their audiences follow them. This could really shake things up in the media, maybe even lead to more fragmentation or maybe even some brand new platforms and voices popping up.
Okay, so we've got this big shift happening with media, and then there's Trump shaking things up in the political world with his cabinet picks. I gotta admit, I was pretty surprised by some of his choices.
Yeah, you and everyone else. Picking Matt Gaetz for Attorney General and Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence definitely sent shockwaves through Washington.
Let's start with Gaetz. He's been a huge Trump supporter, known for his, well, let's say passionate speeches and some pretty controversial statements. To see him potentially running the Department of Justice, it's definitely raising eyebrows.
Yeah, and it's not just his speeches that have people worried. Gaetz has had these allegations of misconduct against him, and there are questions about whether he would face legal challenges or conflicts of interest in this role. It's a big risk, and it could easily backfire on Trump.
Yeah. Then there's Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat who's been more and more critical of her own party. Seeing her potentially leading national intelligence, that's a real twist.
Yeah, her foreign policy views have also been controversial. Some people say she's too sympathetic to authoritarian leaders.
Wow.
This appointment could mean a change in U.S. foreign policy. It'll be really interesting to see how she handles the intelligence community.
It's a bold move, that's for sure, and it seems like he's really trying to disrupt things. And speaking of disruption, we can't forget Steven Crowder's take on all this.
Right, the clip you sent from his show on Rumble, where he calls these picks God-tier level trolling.
Okay, so for anyone who might not know Crowder, he's a conservative commentator known for his provocative style. But what does he mean by trolling here? Is he saying Trump's just trying to get a rise out of his opponents? Or is there something more strategic going on?
Crowder seems to think these are calculated moves to provoke and unsettle the left. It's about pushing buttons, creating chaos, and controlling the narrative through outrage and reaction.
Interesting take. But wouldn't that mean these choices are more about political theater than actually governing?
You've got a point there. Some would argue that putting provocation ahead of experience and qualifications could really hurt these important institutions.
So it's a gamble that could win him some political power or blow up in his face.
Exactly. And while Crowder's perspective is worth considering, it's important to look at these appointments from all angles and think about what they might mean for how these departments actually function.
Right. It's not just about the headlines and the reactions. It's about the real-world consequences of these choices.
Absolutely. And speaking of real-world consequences, there are a couple of other things happening in this post-election world that we need to talk about.
Oh, yeah. There was something about a trial involving a Marine veteran and a new Senate Majority Leader. Both seem pretty important.
Definitely. And these events, even though they seem separate, they might actually be connected to these bigger themes we've been discussing.
Okay, now I'm even more curious. But before we get into those, let's give our listeners a moment to digest everything we've covered so far. It's a lot to process.
It is.
We'll be back in a moment to dive into those other events and see how they fit into the bigger picture. Don't go anywhere.
We were talking about real-world consequences, how these things that seem kind of separate might actually tie back to those bigger themes.
Right. You mentioned a trial and a new Senate Majority Leader. What's the scoop?
Okay, so the first one is the trial of Daniel Penny. He's the Marine veteran involved in that case with Jordan Neely on the subway in New York.
Right.
Really complex case, touches on some deep anxieties. Race, crime, vigilantism in America, it's all there.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound intense. Just for a listener who might not know about this case, can you give us a little background? What happened?
So Jordan Neely, he was a homeless man known for doing Michael Jackson impersonations. He was having a mental health crisis on the subway. Daniel Penny, the Marine veteran, he restrained Neely, used a chokehold, which unfortunately led to Neely's death.
Oh, wow.
It was all caught on video, sparked huge protests and debates about use of force, especially against people who are vulnerable.
So Penny's on trial for?
Manslaughter. The prosecution saying Penny's actions were too much, that he didn't need to use deadly force. But the defense is claiming he was acting in self-defense and to protect the other passengers on the subway.
Man, this case brings up so many tough questions. Race, mental health, public safety, how far someone should go to intervene. What could happen, not just for Penny, but for everyone?
Yeah. The outcome of this trial could really change how we deal with situations like this in the future. It makes us think about, our responsibility to step in when someone's in crisis. What are the legal risks of using force?
Right.
And the bigger systemic problems that lead to homelessness and mental health struggles.
This really shows how complicated these issues are. It's not just black and white.
Definitely not. And it reminds us how divided we are. The way people see this case, who they think is the victim, who they think is in the wrong. It often reflects their existing beliefs about race, class, and the justice system.
Okay, so we've got this very emotionally charged trial happening. And on top of that, there's been a shift in power in the Senate.
Right. John Thune is the new Senate Majority Leader. Might not seem as dramatic as a Marine veteran on trial, but trust me, this could have a big impact in Washington.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the big deal with John Thune? What kind of influence could he have?
Well, Thune is a Republican, but he's seen as more moderate compared to some of the more, let's say, outspoken members of the party. And remember, the Senate has a very slim Republican majority. So Thune's leadership is going to be crucial to get anything passed.
So how do you see this playing out with Trump as president? Will they clash, or could Thune actually help Trump get his agenda through?
That's the million-dollar question. Thune has pushed back against Trump before, especially on things like trade and foreign policy.
Yeah.
But he's also a savvy politician. He knows he needs to work with the president to get things done.
It's like there's another layer of potential conflict here, not just between Democrats and Republicans, but within the Republican Party itself. Could this give Democrats an advantage? Or will it just lead to more gridlock?
It's definitely possible. If Thune and Trump are constantly fighting, it could make it really hard to pass any laws, which might actually help the Democrats in the end. But on the other hand, it could force both sides to compromise, to find some common ground, which is something we desperately need right now.
It feels like so much of this is a repeat of what we saw during Trump's first term. The polarization, the controversies, the drama never stops. But with these new players, these high-stakes situations, it also feels like we're in uncharted territory.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. There's that feeling of, here we go again. But also this sense that the stakes are higher and anything could happen.
And we can't forget about how this is affecting the media. People like Joy Reid and Don Lemon leaving X, shows like Steven Crowder is getting bigger on Rumble. The whole information landscape is splitting apart.
Exactly. It's like we're living in separate media universes, each one with its own facts, narratives, biases. It makes it even harder for people to figure out what's going on and form their own opinions.
So we've talked about the politics, the legal battles, the media frenzy, but what about everyday people? How are they reacting to all of this?
That's the key question. And it's something we'll explore in the last part of our deep dive. We'll look at public opinion, the different perspectives that are out there, and what it all means for the future of American democracy.
Okay, I'm ready for that. But first, let's give our listener a minute to think about everything we've covered. It's a lot to process. All right, so we've covered a ton of ground here, from folks leaving social media to those cabinet picks, the Daniel Penny trial, and John Thune becoming Senate Majority Leader. It's a lot, but it does feel like it's all kind of connected, right?
Yeah, it definitely shows a society wrestling with some big questions: identity, justice, even what truth means these days. But to really grasp the impact of all this, we need to step back a bit, look at the bigger picture.
You mean like, how are everyday people reacting to this? What's the vibe out there? People fired up, scared, or just totally lost?
It's a mix of all of that, honestly. Public opinion is always complicated, but right now, with everyone so divided, it's even more scattered and unpredictable. We're seeing protests pop up in some cities, folks hitting the streets, showing their anger about Trump's comeback and what's happened since.
And on social media, it's just nonstop opinions, hot takes, memes. Makes it hard to tell what people really think.
Totally agree. Social media can be useful to get a sense of what's on people's minds, but it also makes the extremes louder, creates a warped view of things. Some folks are cheering Trump's win and his bold moves. Others are genuinely scared about what's next.
Feels like we're nations split in two, can't even agree on basic facts, let alone how to fix anything. Is there any hope of finding common ground?
It's a tough one, but I do think we can always talk honestly and openly. We got to resist that urge to hide in our own little echo chambers. We need to look for different views, even if they challenge what we think we know.
You know, I keep thinking about that God-tier level trolling thing Crowder was talking about. Could Trump actually be making these divisions worse? Pushing everyone further apart?
It's possible, for sure. Trolling, it's meant to get a rise out of people, get a reaction, often at the cost of having a real conversation. If Trump's intentionally stirring up anger and division, it could damage our society in the long run.
So what now? How do we move forward in a way that heals these rifts instead of making them deeper?
I think it starts with each of us taking responsibility. We all shape the tone of the conversation, how we talk to each other. We can choose to debate respectfully, to actually listen to each other, try to find common ground, even when we don't agree.
That's a powerful thought, and I think our listeners need to hear that. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the negativity and fighting, but we can't give up on finding ways to connect and understand each other.
Exactly. And remember, change takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes patience, sticking with it, and being willing to engage with people who are different from us.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a challenge. In this crazy new world, with all its ups and downs, how are you going to participate? Will you be part of the problem or part of the solution? Add to the noise or try to have a more thoughtful conversation? The choice is yours.
Yeah, and the future, in a lot of ways, depends on the choices we make, on our own and together. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, don't lose hope.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep talking to each other.